Please welcome Chief Product Officer, MGM Resorts International, Anders Tylman-Mikiewicz, Founder, SVP, GM, Medallia Zingle, Ford Blakely, for a conversation moderated by Skift Research Editor, Jeremy Cressman.
Hi, everyone. So in this session, we're going to take a look at the long-term potential of contactless technology to better serve guests and in the short term, aid hospitality's recovery from COVID-19. I think we all know that 2020 has created a business challenge like no other time in the industry's history. And perhaps no destination has faced this challenge more acutely than Las Vegas, a city that, of course, its lifeblood is tourism. But it hasn't all been bad news. For some properties in Las Vegas, like MGM, 2020 has been an opportunity to rethink how they interact with guests, leading to more satisfied customers, more efficient staff, and more meaningful contact with guests. So to help us understand the role that contactless technology will play for the hospitality sector moving forward, today I'm joined by Ford from Zingle, which if you didn't know was acquired by Medallia a year ago today, and Anders from MGM to tell us a bit more. Ford, Anders, welcome both to Skift Global Forum.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ford, let's start with you to set the stage here. You know, contactless technology has been around for a few years now. What's changed in 2020, you know, aside from the obvious of COVID-19? Why is it more important to consider now more so than maybe in the past?
Absolutely. Well, Jeremy, thanks for having me. I think this is a fantastic event. I think in this world of post-pandemic world, it's still important to have contactless conferences. And this is certainly a subject that I love to talk about in terms of contactless tech. So you're exactly right. Contactless technology has been around for a long time. And I think the big change is that it really was a nice to have for a number of years. It's really sort of shifted to a must have. Yeah. And if you think about what contactless technologies were basically built to enable, was first and foremost an elevated customer experience, convenience for the guest, right? But there's been this huge shift now with sort of the health standards has shifted this from experience-based to safety-based plus experience-based. Mm-hmm. So safety, in my mind, has been the big change that has accelerated not only our business, but really accelerated the thought leadership for brands like MGM and what Anders are doing to kind of rethink how to leverage and use contactless tech. You're going to hear, I think, from Anders on a project we partnered with them on that I think is just phenomenal. But to kind of highlight it for you in another way, we've got a high-end brand based in Times Square, New York, that immediately after the pandemic had ground zero to everything that was going on, and Governor Cuomo sanctioned one of these hotels as a vital business to stay open. And this hotel basically housed all the first responders that sort of jumped into the New York world and housed doctors, nurses, et cetera. And the staff at that hotel had to service them much like they would a guest. So the big shift there that I thought was so entertaining to watch, which made me feel good as a founder, was the fact that we weren't only providing great tech to help enable, the frontline responders, which are so important, but the big change, which was really incredible to see, was the prioritization on the safety of the hotel staff. They were leveraging Zingle throughout as a main artery of communication that allowed the staff to be wherever they needed to be to still maintain those very personalized experiences with the first responders, to give them the needs they needed, to deliver room service, to deliver towels to what they may need. So in my mind, there's just been this major shift from where contactless tech used to be a nice to have to a must have. So I'm excited to have Anders and expand on that.
Yeah, for sure. It's so interesting to add this safety imperative to what was already this customer experience focused technology. It's so interesting to hear you say that, Ford. Anders, let's actually talk to you about this. I'm sure the last few months have been an incredible challenge. What sorts of changes in guest behavior have you noticed as customers are coming and interacting with the hotel? And what do guests need differently now that they maybe didn't ask for prior to COVID-19?
Well, so thank you for the opportunity of joining this chat. I truly appreciate everything you guys do at Skift and have been following the conversations today closely. So I love that. In terms of your question, so I think that I read somewhere that we, with COVID, we're sort of going through 3 years worth of digital adoption in 3 months. I'm not sure if the actual metric is accurate, but I think the notion of that is clear to everyone. We can't, you can't go anywhere without scanning a QR code nowadays. People are concerned about their health for very good and real reasons. And of course, that has an impact on how we want to, best serve our guests. How much safety and health plays into a good guest experience today. Having said all that, adventure, travel, and discovering the world has been part of human culture for thousands of years. So it's a pretty strong force. And so I think the key question that we're really asking ourselves, I would like navigate this territory, is like, okay, so what is true sticky change that is coming out of this sort of forced adoption of digital technology? And then what is sort of more like necessary navigation around COVID in itself and addressing like timely concerns around COVID and health and safety. I think so that is really how we think about it. In summary, sort of we when we sort of have gone through all our own internal thinking, analysis, working with health experts, third parties, etc., we sort of came down to a conclusion that we sort of see that we believe that the convenience, ease of use, and health or contactless are essentially good friends that play well with each other. And therefore, we like that sort of fundamental belief drove us into really working on digital enhancements of our customer experience in areas such as mobile check-in, digital menus, virtual queuing. And we think that those experiences are there to stay, not because they remove something that we temporarily wanted to remove, but because they add convenience and ease of use. And at the end of the day, they also provide a healthier or safer experience.
So you added this new mobile check-in functionality after investigating what was happening with guest behavior. I want to dig into this a little bit more, Anders. How did you know to focus on the check-in experience, right? We have all these touch points with customers before they get to the hotel, once they're there, once they leave. Why did you focus on the check-in experience for contactless? And why did you find out that was so important to customers?
So prior to COVID, as recently as CES earlier this year, check-in lines on Thursdays and Friday nights were almost as famous in Vegas as the Las Vegas sign, but for all the wrong reasons. To be very
place in town, huh?
Yeah, to be very transparent, our lines were the #1 customer pain point before COVID. And therefore, we felt it was important to solve this problem, and we're working on solving this problem before COVID. However, with COVID came a very sort of natural and healthy sensitivity to lines touching public surfaces, being in crowded places, which is really why we committed ourselves to not just have it on our roadmap, but actually get it done. And focus very, very hard on greeting our guests upon reopening our properties again with a delightful sort of arrival experience that we really always wanted to offer them, but we're not able to with a sort of purely traditional check-in experience.
Okay.
And so sort of working from the customer backwards, we sort of concluded 3 things across this journey. So like one was like solve the entire problem. So like don't only like let customers check in on their device, but actually allow them to sort of zoom straight to the room, like use their phone as a key across the property. So I think that was like an important notion. Like solving just the check-in part is like a half-baked solution. It doesn't really give you the convenience and safety that we wanted to provide. The second conclusion we made was that the sort of a combination of convenience, ease of use, and health is really powerful, just like I mentioned before. And the third conclusion that we sort of came to was that the human connection matters. Sometimes we just need a friendly welcome after a long and stressful trip. And sometimes we need a human being that can just greet us with and help us with whatever that's on our mind. And sometimes guests might not yet be up for learning yet another digital experience that's being forced into our life. So essentially, we landed in this notion of like standing up a hybrid model versus sort of forcing 100% digital check-in. Where the existing check-in model is still on a path for the customer that exists. So it's really about choice. And I think another important point I want to make is like our ambition was never to eliminate the human. I think where sometimes these conversations often go into is extremes of like, well, now you do everything on your device. There's like no place for the human hospitality experience anymore. And we don't believe that's the case. So the goal here was really to move the transactional nature of the check-in process with your driving license and your credit card, etc., to a digital experience that our guests can go through at their convenience, even well ahead of arrival. And instead pivot the role of our front desk staff into lobby hosts, doing what we think at least human beings really excel at, which is to be personable and hospitable. And so the goal was always to play to the strengths of both our staff and the digital experience. And fundamentally, we don't believe that contactless is the same thing as connectionless. In fact, we think it can be the opposite.
It's so interesting to think about this. You're not stripping away the human aspect of that experience, right? You're just automating some of the parts of it that maybe don't need to be, handled by a human representative. Ford, Anders, I want to ask you both, we saw these changes made with this new mobile check-in process for MGM. How did customers react to that, number one? And what kind of business results have we seen? Are there any early takeaways in terms of the performance of this? I'll defer to both of you, whoever wants to jump in here first.
Anders, do you want me to take that?
Sure.
So I think one of the things that's so phenomenal about what we learned from MGM's deployment of this sort of contactless check-in, right? And I do think it's important that he highlighted that there's flexibility and optionality to it, is that they deployed this new technology in a time where the pandemic was really, really sort of heightened. Everyone sort of, temperatures are pretty sensitive to it. But the results that we found through Medallia, right? The beauty of sort of the Medallia platform is it sort of can analyze the sentiment and the sort of NPS scores of how a customer is feeling about an experience. MGM scores excel like by astronomical numbers. You heard Anders talk about one of the more pain points for hoteliers is the check-in process and the front desk satisfaction. Just to give you some anecdotal data on that, the front desk satisfaction rate increased by 3 to 4 points on an NPS basis, which is statistically relevant. But what blew our mind was that the front desk satisfaction rate grew by 12 points, all in a time where you're deploying new technology. And for most of the people on the call, they're technologists, know that sometimes there's bumps and wavy turns on deploying new tech. But to deploy that during a time where everything was sensitive and have the customers sort of respond that this was the right thing, I thought was phenomenal. So that's why we're really excited to share this content with this audience.
Anders, any thoughts in terms of how customers are reacting to this? Or what are you hearing from people anecdotally or anything internal that you guys have been discussing?
Well, so we obviously use Medallia's tools to get data. We have analytics built into the product because we build it ourselves. So we sort of see data coming through there too. But we do talk to our guests and how they feel about the experience. I think number one, most appreciated thing is the option and the optionality of having this experience. People that go down this path, which is roughly a third of our guests right now, in general love it. And out of those 30%, roughly a quarter actually already now we see repeat usage. Which is surprising for us in Vegas because we're not a destination that typically sees sort of repeat travel in a short period of time. So all in all, we're seeing essentially a much higher adoption than we were shooting for initially. We thought it'd be a little bit of a learning curve, but we were also, having said that, we're also hoping for that. The fact that the airline industry has been sort of paving the way with, sort of the notion of a digital check-in experience, we will hope that we could piggyback that, and that seems to be the case. Like people truly appreciate it, they totally get it. They sort of many of them did the same thing when they were boarding the plane, so it's a natural extension of that sort of customer journey.
So we've got about a minute and a half left. I would love to ask you both for some closing thoughts. Anders, what's next for MGM in terms of contactless deployment? And Ford, any other thoughts about where you think contactless will go next for hospitality?
So I find it truly inspiring that our guests do see the potential in how to further improve the experience. So we have a lot of another sign of that we're doing well with this experience is that we have a lot of engagement and ideas that come from guests. So we're going to work on that, obviously. I think beyond check-in, we have other aspects of our customer experience that we want to improve. And I could just conclude with that. I think our journey with check-in has really taught us that finding this sort of perfect balance between human and digital components in the customer experience is worth the extra mile. And if you crack the recipe well, it really does pay off in a sort of a perceived elevated experience, very much going back to the data that Ford mentioned before.
Cool. Any last thoughts, Ford? Otherwise, we can leave it there.
No, I think I wanted to sort of just highlight and appreciate Anders joining the panel. I think from our perspective, messaging is accelerating right now. And I think I see one of the questions on the right-hand side here, that why messaging? Is I think it's one of the few sort of contactless technologies that's out there that can still maintain that personal engagement, where you can still feel like you're having a one-to-one conversation with a guest, albeit through a safe channel. And so our metrics have exploded, and it's really sort of based upon the heels of brands like MGM that are forward thinking on figuring out new ways to leverage messaging to enable those. And we see tons of brands that are coming to us with new, unique use cases to help enable that. And so it's something I'm proud of as the founder and proud to be partnering with hotels on. So happy to be here, and thank you for the time.
Ford, Anders, been a pleasure having you both here. Thanks for joining us at Skift Forum this year.
Absolutely. Thank you.